Okay, we are in. Hi everybody, buonasera. Ciao Moira.
Ciao Arianna, hi everybody.
Arianna and Moira from Arianna and Friends. How are you guys? We hope you are going to enjoy this wonderful Easter weekend, and happy Easter to all of you. And here we are today because Moira is going to tell us a little bit about traditions around Easter. And we are going to talk about food and culture and history that is around Easter in Italy. And she's going to share with you a lot of information and also some nice culinary information as well. And as you recall, we were thinking of doing this Zoom conference live, okay? But then the spring came and people wanted to go out during the day, and we know that we have, people interested in this kind of food talks with Moira all over the world. So not only Europe, but also Canada and US and Australia and New Zealand. And so the timing became a little issue because of also of the good weather. And so we thought that instead of doing a live session, we are recording it, okay? And it becomes like a free content. But of course, if you like to support us like you always did, you can use our PayPal account and donate whatever you like, okay? It would be greatly appreciated, of course. Yes, and this is the plan. So I will leave now Moira talking to you and explaining this beautiful lecture about Easter and Easter traditions in Italy. And have fun, and I'll speak to you later. Okay, Moira, tutto a posto?
Okay.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
We are ready and we can start. This screen. Okay, and just a second. And here we are. Okay. See screen. Okay, let's start with this. So, of course, we are talking about Easter today, and we must start with the Old Testament. You know, Easter is both a Jewish tradition, but also, of course, a Christian tradition. And we are going to start with the Hebrew Easter. It was the so-called Pesach, not Easter as we call it. That reminds the Passover of the Jewish people from the Red Sea, clearly, to leave Egypt after the slavery. We will see that we have many things in common with this tradition, also regarding the type of foods we have on our table. So some elements of this tradition also come in the Christian tradition. We will see that anyway, we melted that tradition with the more ancient pagan tradition that we had in Italy. The painting that you see is the Passover of the Red Sea by Nicolas Poussin. You can see the Jewish population trespassing the sea led by Moses. This is a moment in which God speaks directly to Moses and tell him, prepare your people to move. And we are in the last of the 10 plagues of Egypt, when God decided to punish the Egyptian for keeping his population as a slave, and ask Moses to make the sacrifice of a lamb, to use the blood of this lamb to sign the doors of the Jewish people, so that when the angel of death of God passes, he will kill all the firstborn of the Egyptian, but he will save the sons of Israel. And this is a very ancient tradition. Some scholars think that before the religious tradition we have in the Bible, this was already a ritual that we... Just a second.
So there is a little interruption, but the dog Mela is doing her job very well. Okay. We will start again soon.
I'm sorry. Of course, in the afternoon, we have couriers coming and dog barking. Okay, so sorry. So let's go back to our the Passover over the Red Sea. Anyway, some scholars think that this is already a very ancient tradition before the Jewish tradition. And it was the tradition of the ancient nomad populations that were moving and sacrificing lambs to ask the fertility of the flock. So it's something very old that comes back also in the Bible. In the Exodus, the Bible also tells us clearly the type of food this people is going to eat during these days, which means that, of course, they're going to eat the lamb. That's the subject of the sacrifice. Then bitter herbs to remind the bitterness of the slavery in the desert, and unleavened bread. Because, of course, they had to move quickly to leave Egypt, and there is no time to wait for the bread to rise. Okay, so rising time is too long, and they use this typical traditional bread. We will see these ingredients coming back also in the Christian tradition, with some exception. Of course, when you define your foods following religious principles, you are also defining your identity. And we will see that Christian will try also to define their own new identity with some differences from the one of the Jewish tradition. And let's move on. And of course, Easter is the most important religious festivity we have in our religion, in the Christian religion. It is the moment of the passion, the death, and above all, the resurrection of Christ. And it is the triumph over death. And of course, this is the most important point of Christian religion. This is a painting by Bartolomeo Schedoni, where you can see the ladies that arrive in front of the tomb of Christ. Here we are on the day of the Sunday of Easter. They find the tomb empty. They found an angel that tell them Christ is not here anymore because he resurrected. And the Easter of resurrection is, for this reason, it is the triumph over death. It is, for this reason, the most important festivity we have. It is not something so new. We will see that we had also in the pagan time a lot of rites regarding the resurrection of nature. Easter, as we know it, was finally established in the Council of Nicaea in year 325, and they decided that it had to be celebrated the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox. And so you see that also for the timing is attached, is strict to the tradition of the pagans that were celebrating the rebirth of nature. So our Easter is almost always between the 25th of March and the 25th of April. And of course, everything starts on the Holy Thursday with the Last Supper of Christ. And you can see this is a very famous painting by Leonardo da Vinci, The Last Supper, that you can find in Milan. You can see that on the table of the apostles, we have the foods of the Jewish tradition. So bread, unleavened bread, and wine. We will find, of course, many different varieties of bread also in our tables. And with some changing in the recipes we use that are not the one of the Hebrew tradition. And regarding this, we were saying before that when you define what you eat following your principles, you are all following religious principles, you are also defining your identity. This is quite an important episode. We are in the New Testament. This is the episode of the vision of St. Peter. Christ is already dead. Peter is the man that you see here in this part of the paint of the printing. Peter is waiting to have lunch. You can see a lady that is preparing food when he looks outside the window and he has a vision. That is what you see up here. St. Peter sees a kind of tablecloth coming down from the sky with all the animals that you can find in nature. There are also snakes, there are a lot of animals. And a voice that tells Peter, go, kill and eat. Peter says, I cannot eat it because I've never eaten uncleaned food. You know that in the Jewish tradition and also in the Muslim tradition, there are, and of course in the Old Testament, we have a series of food that are forbidden, that you cannot eat. Peter sees these forbidden foods on the tablecloth and decided not to eat it. The voice repeated the same command 3 times. Peter, do not accept, and this tablecloth disappears. Later, is speaking with Cornelius, that's a Roman soldier that then converted to Christianism. When finally understand the message, God wanted to tell him that what God makes clean must not be considered unclean by men, okay? And so he understand, for us that are Christian, there is no anymore any unclean food. This means also for the early Christianism, of course, a way to open to everybody. While the Jewish tradition, let's say, is a little more closed, if you're not already part of the tradition, you cannot enter that tradition. In this way, Christianism open its doors and will be also probably one of the reasons of its success among the old Jewish of the area and also other pagan people. It was open to everybody. So we have the abolishment of the clean and unclean food. This is a small printing where you can see in the Jewish tradition what is clean and what is unclean. All these kind of divisions among clean and unclean completely disappear in the Christian tradition. This is also interesting because, of course, we think when they say you can eat everything, there's not a problem related to food anymore. Of course, it is not true. We will have a huge debate for centuries among Christians on what you are allowed to eat and what you're not, even if Peter was quite clear. And we will see that in many cases, the early Christians were keeping anyway the same tradition. So for a lot of centuries, pigs were not so well seen in the Christian diet. Everything will start to change when in Italy we start to have the barbaric invasions, and these people were mainly eating pork, as we've seen already in our previous meetings. And above all, in the 10th century, more or less, when we still have a huge presence of Muslims in in Spain and in that area, we will see that many monks start to ask to eat pig, clearly to show their difference from that people. This is again, what you eat also tells something about your identity. And we must always consider this aspect when we talk about food, above all when they are traditional religious foods. And let's move on. In our tables, we will see in a while, now we're going to start to see some of the traditional Italian recipes. We're going to find elements that traces back to a far more ancient tradition, that is a pagan tradition, in many cases a Greek and Roman tradition, that are the populations that were established in Italy before we became Christian. A typical rite related to spring was the use of eggs. Eggs already for the Greek, but also in other cultures such as the Persian culture, the Chinese culture, eggs were used to be gifted to others as a symbol for fertility. As a way to wish a good new coming year, a new season. It is the period, the middle March, in which nature starts to live back after the long sleep of the winter. And in the Roman tradition, there was the use in this period to bury eggs that were painted in red in the fields as a wishing for prosperity and fertility of the soil. We know also that during the spring festivities that the Romans use to celebrate, they were making a procession for the goddess Ceres. Ceres is the goddess that is basically the Roman version of the Greek Demeter. That's the goddess of agriculture, okay, and the goddess of the crop. And they were taking these trays filled with eggs to the goddess as a good wish for the new coming year. This same tradition of the eggs start to be popular also among the Christian around the 4th century, when they started to give one to the other eggs painted in red. This time red is considered the color of the blood of Christ. So it reminds to the sacrifice of Christ. That is the main reason of this festivity. And you can find it, for example, in the painting here on the left. This is a painting by Segna di Bonaventura. And you can see Mary Magdalene with a red egg in her hand. This use of red eggs, it's not that much used in Italy anymore, but it is still a tradition that is alive in the Orthodox community. So they still today paint in red their eggs and they give it one to the other. Eggs are still anyway very popular. We have this use on the Sunday of Easter, to take little baskets that you can see here. This is a church nearby Florence. We take little baskets of egg to be blessed by the priest. Early in the morning, you go to the mass, the priest blesses the egg, you take it at home and you eat it together with your family. There are, of course, a lot of rites related to this period, so also blessing among the family and so on. Last year, that of course, because of coronavirus, people could not go to the mass. In some areas, and in particular in this little village that you see also here in the picture nearby Florence, the Conad, that is a little supermarket, prepare a little corner of their shop with a series of eggs that were blessed so that everybody could go and take it safely, okay, without going to the mass. So it's a tradition that is still very used by the people. And we have also, of course, the blessing of the palm. That's the symbol of martyrdom. And in some cases, instead of the palm that are not so easy to find in Italy, you find the blessing of the branches of the olive tree. That is, of course, very, very common in our area. And of course, what you celebrate here is the new birth of nature and also of the soul in a more religious point of view, and the resurrection of Christ. And before we talk about Easter, we must talk of what happened before Easter. This is a very detailed and famous painting by Peter Bruegel the Elder. This is always a painter that puts a lot of details in his painting. You must imagine this painting divided into two parts. On the right, we have Lent. On the left, we have Carnival. This is the fight between Carnival and Lent. Lent are these 40 days before Easter, in which the Christian tradition reminds the 40 days that Christ passes into the desert. It means that in this period, we have a series of food prohibition. You are not allowed to eat meat, you are not allowed to eat egg, you are not allowed to eat anything that's quite tasty and so on. It is a period of purification. It's a period of fasting, of mortifying the flesh, of repentance from sins, and so on. And you can see the fight with the period before. That is the period of Carnival, when everybody is eating a lot and so on. In fact, you can see this man, that's the symbol of Carnival, that's pretty fat on board of a wine barrel that lead his team. Here you can see a pig. On the other side of the painting, you see a very skinny Lent with just simple food, just some bread instead of the pig that we have on the left. On the right, we have fishes. And in this period, of course, the people could not. This is a tradition that today is a little abandoned, okay? So most of the people usually abstain from meat on Friday, but not everybody, just a few of them. In the past, instead, it was a very strict prohibition, okay? So everybody was not eating anything for these 40 days. And of course, in this period also, in these 40 days, these were mostly farmers' family that had a lot of chickens that were making a lot of eggs, okay? And they could not eat eggs in this period. And it is here that they start to boil the egg to have them available when it is the moment of Easter. And you will see in a while that most of our traditional recipes use hundreds of eggs, because it was, of course, a product that they had in huge quantities because of the prohibition of the Lent. And if it was extremely forbidden to eat all this food, it was also mandatory to eat a lot on the day of the feast, on the day of the religious celebration. Here we have also one episode related to St. Francis. Everybody was obliged, we must say, to celebrate the festivity, Sunday or Christmas and so on. One day it is the day of Christmas, but it is also a Friday. And the monks, the brothers of St. Francis, do not know what to do. They think probably it's better to fast, not to eat anything, because it is Friday and we have to clearly follow these restrictions on the sacred day. And they go to ask to St. Francis, because it is Friday, but it is also Christmas. And St. Francis says, absolutely no, we have to eat a lot. We must celebrate. It is very important. It is more important to celebrate than to mortify the flesh in these sacred days. And you will see that in Easter in Italy, we used to celebrate a lot and eat a lot because, of course, it is mandatory also from a religious point of view. And we are now starting to see the different foods. You will see that we melted together pagan tradition related to fertility and religious tradition, of course, related to the to the passion and to the resurrection of Christ. Let's start with these kind of cookies. These are produced in the island of Elba. That's the island in front of the coast of Tuscany, and it is also, of course, a part of Tuscany. And you can see immediately that the shape of these breads, they are small, they are kind of biscuits. It's quite unusual, okay? They, of course, they are sportella, this one, and the cerimito, this other. They, of course, remind to the sexual attributes, okay? These are more related, of course, to the rites of fertility. The tradition wants that on the Palm Sunday, that is the Sunday before Easter, if a guy is interested into some girl, he will give her one of these cerimito, okay? If the girl is interested, on the day of Easter, she will reply back with one sportella. This was also the way, the traditional way to prepare families, okay? It is a kind of courting ritual. And usually after the exchange of these kind of cookies, you had a new couple ready for clearly getting together and then get married. Let's move on. Very similar to the first, to the other tradition related to fertility. Here we are in Abruzzo. This is the pupa and the horse. La pupa e Lucastielle. I'm sorry for my pronunciation of these southern dialects, because of course I come from the north, so I'm not very good. So if some Italian is listening, do not get mad. I'm sorry. Anyway, this is another tradition. You can see that we have a cookie shaped with the figure of a girl, a baby, and another one with the figure of a horse. Of course, to the girls, you're going to give the pupa, and to the guys, you're going to give the horse. Look that on both of them, we have, of course, one egg. Again, for that idea of the egg as a symbol of rebirth and fertility. And this is another tradition that comes from Abruzzo, so central south of Italy. They usually come with very rich decorations, okay? Because of course, it's a festivity day and you are not sparing money and so on. You are using everything you have for this celebration. Let's move on. We go to Tuscany and we have the Pasimata from the Garfagnana and the Schiacciata di Pasqua from Pisa. You can see that they look very similar, and you will see in a while that we have a lot of these pies looking very similar. This is basically another version of bread. We've seen before that the Jewish use unleavened bread, so flat bread. Instead, the Christian also, to show their difference, use very big and raised breads. The difference among these two that are very close one to the other, always made with a lot of eggs and flour and sugar and so on. The main difference is what you have inside. In the Pasimata, you have raisins. Instead, in the Schiacciata di Pasqua in Pisa, you have anise. Also the period in which merchants start to move from one village to the other and in the countryside to sell spices, because it is the only period in which these people will buy their spices. Usually they are too expensive and they are used only by the richest family. In this period, of course, that you are wasting everything to celebrate, you are also buying this type of food. And it is the reason why you find this expensive product also in a very poor type of food. Schiacciata comes probably from the word, from the verb schiacciare, that means to crush. And probably in this case, it refers to the high number of eggs that were crushed to make the dough of these different pies. Every family was making schiacciata, but not just one schiacciata. They were making tons of schiacciate, okay? The tradition was to gift these schiacciate to all the sons of the family and the daughters of the family. This is a period in which every family has 10, 12 sons, and each one of them was receiving 5, 6 of these schiacciate. So guess which big work was to prepare everything. Usually all this type of bread start to be prepared on the Holy Thursday. That's the day of the Last Supper of Christ, to be then served and distributed on the day of Easter. Here, I put also 2 different pictures. The one that you see here on the left has been made by our chef Licia. This other one on the right instead is the one that you find in the supermarket, the one for sale. You can see that the big difference is the color among the two. This one looks a little more overcooked, okay? And do not think that it is a mistake by Licia. The tradition of these schiacciate was to eat them during the day of Easter, but they were usually preserved for a very long time. Usually they were lasting also for more than 1 month, okay? So of course, when they were cooking them, they were cooking a little more so that when they were drying, they were not developing mold. It was easier in this way to store them. So the original one are the dark one that you see. Today, for commercial reasons, usually you find it in this gold because the people prefer this golden color, okay? But the real were made with the system. To make this type of foods, now we can move on and you can see other versions of the same big bread. In this case, they are salty. The one were sweet. This is the crescia from the Marche, made with cheese, and this is the torta al formaggio from Umbria, always made with cheese. You will see also in Italy some of the same basically pies called pizza di Pasqua, Easter pizza. It is made in the same way, always with cheese. And of course, we've seen that they were preparing a lot of these type of food. We see, you can imagine that to make these, you do not use just one dough, okay? They are using more than 4 dough in different moments of the day. So it takes forever to make this type of things. And also remember that they were making these not in the houses that we have today that are well sealed and you do not have cold air coming from the outside and so on. So the rising of this type of breads was not so easy. And the ladies were using a series of tricks, such as using the big pans with boiling water to make steam and growing the temperature, opening the window to let the temperature go down if it was too hot, to have the perfect rising of their bread. When they were, mostly many families, different families were working to this type of pies all together. Above all, in areas like Tuscany and central south of Italy, where we had the system of sharecropping, where a lot of families were living together in the same farm. So after preparing the dough, that it's something that takes a couple of days, more or less, they were all moving with their dough to the oven to start to cook them. And of course, when there were so many quantities of breads and so many different families, they were using a little object such as the leaf of an olive tree or a little piece of pasta and so on, to be put on top of each one of this pie to remember who was the owner. And this type of preparations, so long and altogether is also meant, of course, to create the sense of the community. This is a society until a couple of centuries ago, so not so far in the past, in which it was very important, the cooperation between different families if they wanted to survive, okay? And so, of course, this is also a way to build this sense of community and to build the cooperation that then will be used during the summer in the works in the field. Let's move on. Here we go south of Italy. This is the Cuzzuppa or Cudura in Calabria, and you can see a similar version of Naples, the Casatiello. I put them together because you see the shape is similar. One is sweet and the other is salty. The people from Calabria and from Naples will be extremely offended if you tell them that they look similar. But of course, the idea probably is the same. This type of food is another variety of this bread for Easter, but it has a very, very ancient tradition. It traces back to the time in which we had the Greek in south of Italy. And also the name reminds this Greek tradition. Cuzzuppa probably comes from kutsupon, that means bread, okay? Cudura is another name that refers to crown, so to the shape that you see. You see, it is a bread, in this case, it is wheat with a series of eggs. These are eggs that you can see here and there, put on top with some pastry in the shape of a cross to keep it together. It was prepared in the ancient pagan past as a gift to Demeter. And we've seen before, Demeter is the Greek version of Ceres, and it is the goddess of agriculture. So it was an offer, clearly, to wish a good crop and a good beginning of the new natural year. Of course, it passed then into the Christian tradition. The name Kudura refers to crown. So in the Christian tradition, this shape started to refer to the thorn crown of Christ. And while eating it, while destroying it, you are, because of course, when you eat it, you destroy the crown, you are also freeing Christ from his sufferings. Many symbolical elements, of course, the shape of the crown of thorns of Christ, the eggs as a symbol of rebirth, and these stripes that have the shape of a cross, of course, to remember the passion on the cross of Christ. Regarding this Calabrian version of these pie, it is served traditionally with different shapes depending on the importance of the member of the family. So kids will have a very small pie, while the elderly will have a bigger one, okay? And today, mostly everybody's eating the same, okay? It's not like in the past when everybody was having its own pie. Together, you eat it together. And a curious fact, this type of pies, like the one that we've seen before, the different schiacciate, pizza di Pasqua, and so on, were usually eaten for breakfast because the day of Easter was divided in different parts. We had a big breakfast before going to the Mass when everybody was eating. Then coming back from the Mass, you had the big lunch to eat together with your family. So you see, it's a day in which you eat too much, and above all, for the farmers' families, after these 40 days of Lent that were extremely hard to pass, it was a nice way to celebrate we can say, the new year. Regarding this fact, in Pisa, we have also the tradition to celebrate New Year's Eve on the 25th of March. That is the day of the Annunciation. And this too, you can imagine, is related to the old fertility pagan traditions. And We have also another variation of this casatiello that is called tortano. In that case, the eggs are not on top of the crown, but inside. The tortano very likely is more ancient than the version that you see here. And this one is probably the evolution of the other old pie. Then, let's move on. Torta Pasqualina. Now we are in Liguria, northwest of Italy. Torta Pasqualina, of course, has inside eggs, because you see eggs are always present in our table. Inside here, you can see also some spinaches. There is another variation with artichokes. It is something more modern, because this is the period in the year in which artichokes start to be ready, but it's not yet plenty of them. So today it is plenty of them if you go to the supermarket, but if you look on the fields, you see that we do not have that many. So probably the variation with artichokes comes a little later, okay? So when artichokes start to be available longer in season. This is made with a puff pastry that was, of course, made by hand in the past. It was handmade, and you had to be very, very good to make this puff pastry very, very thin. So to put 33 different layers, one on top of the other, to remember, of course, the years of Christ. Today, everybody still is making the torta pasqualina, and you probably can get this recipe if you're interested into this class. And today, mostly you buy the ready puff pastry, because making 33 different layers, very, very thin, is extremely hard. Okay. Regarding this pie, in our previous talks, we were talking about the ancient cookbooks, the modern cookbooks of the 16th century and so on. And we find this pie in one of that cookbook, in particular the one of Ortensio Lando, that writes in the 16th century, that talks about this pie and call it gatta fura. Gatta means cat, fura means to steal. It was considered something so delicious that cats were trying to steal it, which is probably not so likely, because of course cats do not like vegetables, but anyway, this was the ancient name of this torta pasqualina. We are now moving to another region, Abruzzo, where they make the frittata di Pasqua. You know what is a frittata? It is an omelette. You can put inside some cheese and everything, but the frittata di Pasqua they make in Molise is, of course, a very special frittata, because it is for the celebration of Easter. So let's see this frittata. You can see here the frittata di Pasqua, okay? This lady that you see is the Signora Antonietta. She's a kind of superstar in the village for the frittate that she makes, a traditional frittata. The traditional frittata made in Molise, when you remember, we've seen that they were collecting the eggs for 40 days and so on, so there were plenty of eggs. In these three frittate, you have 130, 140, 150 different eggs, okay? So it's a huge frittata. There's also a village in Molise that, of course, like it's the use of the Italians that love to eat, have the round Sagra della Frittata, so a festival dedicated to the frittata. And here you can see the frittata they make for this festival, where inside you have 1,861 eggs, okay? So they are huge. To cook this frittata takes between 12 and 13 hours, okay? So it's quite a complex work. And you can see that the families traditionally add some more egg year after year. So in this picture, you can see this Signora Antonietta that gets always a little older, while her frittata gets always bigger. And the tradition wants that all the members of the family help, of course, to prepare this monstrous frittata. So each one will be breaking the egg, clearly, to be part of these use. Let's move on to the lamb. We've seen that the lamb was already common in the Jewish tradition. Of course, it is one of the most famous dishes also in the Christian tradition. In this case, we're talking about a very special egg. That is the Easter egg from Favara in Sicily. And in Sicily, they make a sweet lamb. Lamb is, of course, the symbol of Christ, that sacrifice clearly to save mankind. And of course, it is strictly related to the Old Testament, to that lamb that God asked the Jewish to sacrifice. The lamb of Favara is made with a typical specialty from Sicilia, that is the royal paste, that is basically the almond paste. Here we have also the influence of the Muslim world, because it is during the Muslim domination, the Arab domination of Sicily, that almond started to be imported. The ingredients are very old. We think that this royal paste based on almonds was invented at the beginning of the 12th century in the convent of the Martorana. In fact, many times you find many sweets made with this type of ingredient, maybe in the shape of different fruits and so on, that are called paste di Martorana, to refer to the original place where it was developed. And inside we have another typical famous Sicilian ingredient, that is pistachio. So they make this cream of pistachio, they seal it in this perfectly decorated almond paste, and the Easter lamb is ready. Regarding the use of the common people of this type of lambs, is not so common until more or less 1898, when we know that it started to be available for everybody, because at the time Sicilian people were preferring to eat in the period of Easter cannoli or cialdoni, that are very close to the cannoli. I didn't put here cannoli because I'm sure you know what a cannolo is, but it was in the past traditional of the period of Easter. Today, instead, of course, it is present every day in all the pastry shop and so on. So it's something that you find through all the year, differently from this lamb that instead is only available in the period around Easter. Regarding the almond paste, in Italian is also called marzapane. It is a name that comes back in Italian from the German word, when they call it marzipan, okay? Because here it was called, as I told you, royal paste. Someone think that marzapane comes from Martiopanis, the bread of March. That is possible because, of course, it is produced right in this period of the year. We've seen the importance of the symbolical use of bread, that's also in the Last Supper of Christ, and in the different breads that, of course, are inspired by that we've seen before. And it is made basically by flour of almond. In the past, it was a flour and almonds and honey, because sugar was extremely expensive. Today, it is usually almond flour and sugar and water. Okay, that's today it's always available, also sugar, so we can afford to make it with this other system. And let's move on. Pastiera, Napoli. This is another of these traditional pies we use for Easter, that anyway come from a pagan tradition. You can see this statue. This is in Naples, and this is the siren Partenope. Partenope gives also the name to all the area. They are called the Partenopei in Italian to refer to this siren. This is a Greek tradition. The tradition wanted that this siren, called Partenope, was living in the Gulf of Naples, in nearby Castel dell'Ovo. If you see Naples, probably you remember this huge castle on the beautiful Gulf that they have there. And she was singing for the people of Naples. And they loved this siren singing for her. And the people decided to make a series of gifts to this siren. So they take her flour, that of course is a symbol of richness. They take ricotta, clearly to show their generosity and to thank the siren. They take the fiori di arancio, orange flowers that are typical of the area. If you've been in Naples, probably you've been also in Sorrento, where they grow beautiful oranges and lemons and so on. And these flowers are very typical in the pastry of this area. They give some spices that of course were extremely expensive, so it was a way to show how thankful they were. They give wheat boiled in milk, wheat to symbolize the animal, the vegetable part of the world, of the vegetable realm, and milk to symbolize the animal realm, and then of course sugar. The siren is extremely happy for this gift. She takes them to the gods melt them together, and they create the pastiera. The pastiera always come with 7 stripes to remind the 7 ingredients that are at the origin of this type of pie. Today, the pastiera is mandatory on the tables of the people of Naples. Everybody's preparing the pastiera, starting from, as usual, the Holy Thursday, and it will be served then on Sunday in the Easter. Again, this is another of the things that were served for the breakfast and not for the lunch. And this was the legendary story of this pastiera. All this food have a lot of legends, different variations among the legend and so on. So for sure, we will never know the truth about them. Probably the pastiera anyway was born in the 16th century, again in a convent, in the convent of San Gregorio Armeno, where one of the nuns there wanted to prepare something that remind her also of the walk in the garden, where she was smelling this beautiful perfume of oranges and so on. And she used the ingredients that were available in this period of the year, so the wheat boiled with milk and so on, to prepare this type of pies. These were usually prepared in big quantities by the nuns and then used as a gift for the noble families. This was, of course, a strategy of the convent to attract the daughters of these families, because, you know, in the past, not every girl was going to get married. If you were not going to get married, above all, if you were coming from a noble family, you were starting your religious career inside one of these monasteries or convents and so on. So it was a kind of marketing of the nuns, clearly, to attract the rich people. That, of course, were then making donations, work of arts as a gift. So it was quite important. Okay. Then let's move on. The abbacchio. Abbacchio is the lamb, the agnello. In particular, abbacchio means the suckling lamb. I choose this one, but this is a dish that you find everywhere in Italy. Everybody is making its own variation of lamb for the day of Easter. This is the variation we find in Rome and also in all the area around Rome, in Lazio. And abbacchio, we seen, means suckling lamb. Scottadito means that burns your finger, because the tradition wants that this is served extremely hot. They say that it is because it was a type of dish that was prepared by the shepherds when they were in the fields with their flocks. And of course, they were taking the chops directly from the barbecue, so they were extremely hot, and they were eating them immediately. This is again another of this dish that we find also in the Roman tradition. We have three different authors that are talking about this lamb eaten in this period of the year: Varrone, Columella, and Jovenale. In particular, Jovenalis, I think you call it, you call him, tells of the huge markets of lamb that they had in the Forum in Rome in this period of the year for this traditional typical dish that was eaten in the period of March. This is something I told you that you find through all Italy with many different variations. Each one has its own recipe. Usually it's a secret recipe that the family do not share. But anyway, it's something very common for this period. Of course, the symbol of lamb refers directly to Christ and also to the Old Testament that we've seen before. Then we remain in the area of Rome. This is the vignarola. Vignarola is not a traditional food of Easter, but it is almost always served as a side dish during the lunch of Easter. Vignarola is made with seasonal ingredients. In particular, we have fava beans, we have artichokes, we have, someone put also asparagus, we have lettuce, and in the modern variation, we have also guanciale. That's that special type of bacon that they make in the area nearby Rome. Here again, we go back to the pagan tradition, in particular for the use of the fava beans. For the Romans, fava beans were storing the soul of the dead. For this reason, in Italy, when we have All Soul Day in November, we make little biscuits and so on that are called fave dei morti, the fava beans of the dead. That refers to that use of association of fava beans and the soul of the dead. Also in the Greek tradition, the fava plants were considered a kind of union point between the world of the dead underground and the world of the alive on top of the ground. So in some cults of the Greek, it was forbidden to eat fava beans. Of course, in the day in which you celebrate the rebirth of Christ and this triumph over death, you will have, of course, the fava. It's one of the most typical symbols of the resurrection. And these fava beans were used also at the time of the Romans in the period of Floralia that were usually held in the month of April, and it was a series of festivity for the coming back of nature, and they were throwing these fava beans for the goddess Ceres, the agricultural, the god of agriculture. Let's move then with something very typical of Easter, the egg, the chocolate egg. Here you can see in this corner there is also a bunny, and you will see that we are not talking about bunnies in Italy because it is not an Italian tradition, okay? It is something that today you find as a decoration, usually together with the egg. You find chocolate bunny and so on, but it is something we have imported from a northern country and so on. So it's not something typical. That's why you do not find any rabbit, anything served on the tables of Easter. Of course, rabbits make a lot of little rabbits, so they are quite a good symbol for fertility festivity. That is the reason why it is in other traditions, of course, always related to this waking up of nature. Going back to the chocolate egg. We know that the French king Louis XIV, the Sun King, asked to his pâtissier, to his pastry maker, to cover eggs with chocolate. Okay, it was used mostly as a decoration. Probably the chocolate egg was invented in England or in France, it is not clear, but we have, of course, the Italian tradition. And in Italy, we know that in 1725, in Piedmont, in Turin, Turin is very close to the boundary of France. The typical foods of Piedmont are almost always inspired by French food. Anyway, in Turin, this lady, the Signora Gambone, was the owner of a pastry shop in one of the central roads of Turin, via Roma, and she makes a series of eggs, filling the half real egg with chocolate, and she makes this chocolate egg as a decoration for a shop. And this is a thing that people start to like, and they started to produce it in town. We must wait anyway the beginning of the 20th century before they find a system to create empty half eggs, clearly to put something inside. And today, you know that traditionally you have a little surprise inside the chocolate egg. And the first surprise inside the egg is the one that you see on the right. It is an egg made by Fabergé. Fabergé, you know, it's that famous jeweler that was working for the czars of Russia, that in 1885 makes the first egg with a surprise inside. This was asked by the Tsar Alexander III as a present for his wife, Maria Fyodorovna. And you see, it's in this case a very simple egg. Fabergé usually makes wonderful decorated eggs with jewels, precious stone, and so on. This is very simple because it must remind a real egg. You can see it's covered with enamel, and inside there is a golden ring to open it. When you open it, it works like a kind of matryoshka. Inside there was this other little yolk egg made, of course, in pure gold. Inside the yolk egg, there was this little chicken. That is, again, pure gold. Here we do not see it very well, but the eyes are made with ruby. Inside these other two parts, unfortunately, went lost. Inside the chicken, there was the little crown that remind, of course, the crown of the czars of Russia. Inside the crown, there was a little pendant. It was a ruby with its necklace as a present for the wife of the czar. So it's in the late 19th century that they start this use of putting some surprise inside the egg. In Italy, already around the mid 20th century, when they finally find a way to open these eggs and to have an empty egg inside, they started to put little presents. At the beginning, these presents were very simple animals made with sugar. Today, instead, you know, you can also ask to some pastry shop to put whatever you like inside the egg. And of course, about the symbol of the egg, we talk a lot during this talk. And of course, is one of the many symbols of fertility and rebirth. Then let's move, and this is the last of our Easter traditional dishes. The colomba di Pasqua. This is something that today usually close the lunch and you serve it after the breakfast, after the lunch, and after everything. Colomba di Pasqua. we have two different traditions regarding this colomba. One traces back to the Lombard period. We are in the 6th century, and we are nearby Pavia, where the Lombard king Alboino is sieging the city. And the tradition wants that the population make a series of bread in the shape of a dove, to give it to the King Alboino, and is quite happy for this present, and decide to leave the city and not to destroy it. Of course, the dove reminds two different things, again, biblical moments. Noah, that with his ark is in the middle of the flood that God sent, and he leave a dove go outside. When the dove is able to stop, he understand that the flooding has ended, and they can, of course, stop with their ark. And the other one is the symbolical aspect of the dove, that in the Christian tradition is usually the symbol for the Holy Spirit, of course. Then, related to this dove, we have a second tradition, that is the one of the men that you see here. This one is San Colombano, Saint Columbanus. It is an Irish monk, very popular everywhere in Europe, and his stories are almost always related to wine, to food, and so on. So it's quite important for our, for our tradition. Anyway, San Colombano is in Italy. He is meeting with the Queen Teodolinda. Teodolinda is another Lombard queen, and we are in year 612. Teodolinda offers a huge lunch for San Colombano, that was considered already a saint at the time, so it was a very important guest. And she served a series of birds, pheasants, and so on to the saint. The problem is that this big lunch is offered in the period of Lent. And of course, Saint Columbanus cannot accept. He does not want to offend the queen. She's a very important person, of course. So he just bless the table. He makes the sign of the cross, and all these birds get transformed into bread birds. And of course, the San Colombano and this monks can take part to the lunch. We've seen these very old stories about the colomba, about the dove of Easter, but we do not have in Italy the use of making breads in the shape of a dove. To this type of thing, to a kind of bread in the shape of a dove, we must wait very, very modern time. And we are in 1930 at the Motta. Motta is a huge company that still exists today, that is famous for its production of panettoni, another of these traditional kind of breads that is served usually in the period around Christmas. Here we have Dino Villani. Dino Villani is the man that follows the marketing part of the company. And he knows that the company has this problem that, of course, making mainly desserts for Christmas, during the year, their machinery are not working. So he decided to invent something to recycle the same machinery they are using for panettoni for Christmas in other moments of the year. And so they invented the colomba. Inside the colomba is very close to the panettone. The dough is not so different. What changed is the shape of a dove that has a little more sacred symbolical meaning, of course. And today it is something that is, even if it is so new, it's extremely popular among the Italians. So usually on the Easter day, you will end your lunch with a slice of colomba. So I hope you enjoyed this walk through the tables of the Italians. If you want, you can, of course, send us an appreciation for that. And we can share with you 3 different recipes of very simplified recipes of the torta pasqualina, the schiacciata, and also something that's a typical liquor made with artichoke. We have not seen artichokes, but artichokes are usually the typical side dish of all these other dishes that are served in the period of Easter, because it is in season right now. So I give back the word to Arianna, just a second. And let me close this presentation. Okay. Anna, are you still there?
Yes, yes. Okay, and now, okay. I don't see you now. Okay, now I see you. So thank you. Grazie, Moira. Brava.
Thank you.
I also learned new things that I didn't know before. So thank you very much. And yes, we really hope you enjoy this. I think it has been fun and educational together, you know, as usually with our tours and activities that we offer. So really, thank you very much. And yes, as Moira was anticipating, we are very, very happy to provide you some recipes that are related to the Easter tradition. So to all the people who will be happy to donate really anything, you know, we are happy to then send you per email 3 recipes. And as Moira said, this torta pasqualina, the one with the spinach and the eggs inside. The schiacciata, the one that needs, you know, many preparations of the dough, you know, and for example, my mother did it yesterday and she took really the whole day. But at the end, you know, it's a big satisfaction. And she made 4, okay? So she read 2 per children.
Of course.
2 for me and 2 for my brother. But no, then we share it also with the other friends and family. But you know, she made 4. It's a long thing. So of course you can make less. But anyway, we're giving you the recipe from one of our cooks, okay? Or directly the recipe of my mom. Let's see. And then yes, this chinar artichoke liqueur that you can do at home. It's very easy actually, and it's very typical. It's the best finishing of an Easter lunch, right? After all,
it's also digestive, of course.
It's something to digest, you know, food that you started eating early in the morning. And so the chinar is one of the digestives we have. It's part of the amaro, right?
Yes, of
Out
course.
of these bitter, you know, digestive drinks that are alcoholic, of course. So it's like limoncello, but made with artichoke leaves. Okay, and yes, so this is something that we are very happy to share with you. And if you have also any questions, okay, about everything that Moira explained today, please ask. We are going to post this video on mainly on Facebook, and it will be available also on YouTube. So you can, of course, make any questions you want, and Moira will give you more details. Okay. So I think we said everything, right?
Yes, we did.
Okay. I know we have something else actually. We had in our plan also to share more food talks or other traditional talks with Moira in the next weeks. One about the history of wine and one about the history of the Italian language, because you know that we are also celebrating Dante Alighieri from the Divine Comedy this year. So he, of course, had a big role in the history of the Italian language. And so if this video here will be successful, then we are planning to do the same in the future, but we don't know how and when, but we will keep you updated, okay? So you can yes, write to ask for any questions. And grazie mille, Moira. Thank you.
Grazie a voi. Thank you.
So much. And we'll see you guys around in Italy or online. Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Ciao. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.